So I want to share with you, lastly, some lessons learned and give you some anonymous situations where we've used this and it's helped. And then Kim can come up and share a little bit more, and then we will have another opportunity for question and answer as we wrap things up here. But here's some lessons that I've learned, and some of these are fairly obvious. We started last night in terms of talking about conflict, and first lesson learned, there will always be conflict. Just be aware. There's always going to be conflict, but understand that victory can be born out of adversity. Once again, if you've got a difficult situation and there's a lot of people that know about it and everybody's wondering how can this get resolved, when it does get resolved by the power of God and the Holy Spirit, it's a testimony to those people and to the whole church that Christians are different, that we work through our stuff. But there will always be conflict. Number 2, conflict resolution is hard work and takes a lot of time. Don't just rush into this. Don't just think, oh, this is going to be easy. It's going to test you. It's going to challenge you. It's going to make you pray for wisdom a lot. And it's going to take time. Don't rush the process. There are some things with some groups that I'm still working on that it's been 2, 3, 4 years that I'm trying to get them to sort some things out. Number 3, conflict resolution doesn't mean that consequences are nullified. Okay? Conflict resolution doesn't mean that there won't be consequences. Sometimes when two people have hurt one another, it's purely emotional, and that can be sorted out. But sometimes in bigger situations, and I'll share some with you here in a little bit, there may need to be legal involvement. Somebody has been wronged legally, and we're going to talk about, no, you don't sue your brother or your sister, but sometimes the courts need to get involved. And we've got to understand that even if there's forgiveness, even if there's reconciliation, there still may be consequences to whatever the action or the sin may have been. Number 4, many conflict resolution situations need to be kept under the radar. They don't need to be public discussion. If you do your job well, there's reconciliation, but most people don't even know that anything ever happened. It just got sorted out. We don't need to wave flags and blow trumpets and announce it. It's good. God gets glorified. There's unity. There's reconciliation. But a lot of times it's done on the down low. Number 6, reconciliation does take elder-like characteristics in the people that are involved. If you've got a hot temper, if you're not very patient, if you tend to react to people or tend to take sides, or if you tend to rush to the side of the underdog, that's your thing, then you may not be real good at this, because you've got to maintain elder-like temperance, a balance, an ability to not get emotionally drawn in or to be shocked. Sometimes you've got to have what we call a poker face, where you don't go, oh my goodness, how could you have done that? Well, you just blew the whole meeting. I mean, you're supposed to be the one that keeps it cool, keeps everybody in line and talking, not reacting. So you've got to have kind of elder-like characteristics. Another one, number 7. Some situations aren't going to get worked out. I hate to say that. I'd like to believe that reconciliation always happens, but sometimes people get stuck. Now, they've still got time. Maybe it will eventually. But like I said, there's a few that I'm working on right now that one side has just dug their heels in. They refuse to admit some things. They refuse to get honest about some things. And we're still working on it, and it's just taking a long time. Number 8, resolving conflict doesn't mean that we become weak or passive about sin or bad behavior in the church. Okay? Last night, I sensed from a few of you in the fellowship that you were a little worried that if we go down this road of conflict resolution, we're all just passive people and happy all the time and don't have a lot of convictions. No! The Bible's still true. We need to take a stand for doctrine. Sin is still sin. That's a bad thing. We can get strong about those things. but still be balanced in terms of dealing with difficulty and situations that need to be resolved. We good with that? Do you understand what I mean? We're not looking to just make everybody low on the emotional scale. You never react to anything. All right. And then, number 9, sometimes after a conflict is resolved, you still need to do a wellness check every so often down the road. You know, it'd be nice to say, this was resolved, it's sorted out, it's all been forgotten, we've moved on. And in a lot of cases, that is exactly what happens. I've seen people that were at each other's throats later on become great friends and hanging out together, and the chemistry's great, and that's what you hope for. But you know, every so often, it's good for you as a leader to do a little spot check. Hey, bro, how you feeling about so-and-so? Hey, that situation that we dealt with a long time ago, I know I'm not bringing up, I don't want to bring up bad news or make you feel bad, but are you doing okay? And just do a spot check. Yeah, everything's fine, bro. Doing fine. Okay, then we move on. So those are some lessons that I've learned just in dealing with conflict resolution over the years. Let me give you, once again, some anonymous situations where, once again, this process that we've talked about tonight has been very helpful. For example, 2 families that this is in our ministry back home, but they got hurt over the fact that they both had teenage children, and the children were not in the church, and the children got involved and had a baby out of wedlock, and that was difficult enough for these 2 families. But then, because one family had a lot of money and the other family didn't have much money, there became issues in terms of support and financial questions about how much could each family do, and it got to be very personal and very hurtful. And so we had to get together and say, wait a minute, let's talk this through. And once again, we used this approach where the opportunity to write out a letter and show empathy for the other side was demonstrated. Another situation that we had to deal with the eldership in Philadelphia was dealing with alleged child abuse in the church. And this was a very difficult case, and it took the whole eldership team in Philadelphia to work with this. But basically, the case had risen to the point where the legal authorities needed to be brought in from the outside. And we decided as the eldership that is what needed to happen. That really we needed to support both families spiritually, but that there needed to be the proper authorities that could investigate and provide the right sort of counseling needed and all that sort of stuff. And so we relied heavily on the outside resources, and then we would take care of the families spiritually on the inside. But that was a very difficult case that we worked with there. There's been situations with churches. We had a church where there was a lead couple that began to take the church down the wrong road. They began to be more isolated from our family of churches. And it got to be a real issue with the membership of that church, to where they were going to rise up in rebellion against those leaders, that leader couple, and basically it was going to split the church. And instead we got involved and began to get the situation settled down, and basically were able to help the leader couple understand that this wasn't going to be a good fit, and if they continued in their role, it would split the church. The couple resigned, they were given a good severance, they've moved on, and the church is healthy now. There was another situation where there was a question about who leads the church. There had been a group of trustees and a board of directors that at one point had been pretty much in charge of the church during some difficult times, but that style of leadership stayed in place. And yet it began to be an issue between the biblical leadership of the evangelist and what would have been the elders, and it caused tension there between those two groups, and the church was kind of caught in the middle. And we needed to get together and help reconcile that very difficult situation. And then there was another church situation where the leader was once again going a different direction from the ICOC family of churches and beginning to kind of drift away. And the members weren't happy about that, but they wanted to kind of call that leader on the carpet. But it would have been divisive. It would have been causing a split in the church. And we had to say, even though we don't agree with that church's leadership position right now, that we would have to support them because they are the evangelist and the women's ministry leader, and let basically nature run its course. Let God reveal what would happen. Eventually, that church leader did leave. The church is back on track. Things are going well, but it took some patience and some wisdom to get through that one. There's been bigger situations that I won't go into in detail, but in our family churches, even around the world, churches get crossways with each other. Leaders get crossways or have misunderstandings or get feelings hurt. Some churches want to pull away, and we get involved to begin to talk to leadership about, okay, let's figure out what this is. What's the heart of the issue? What are we really talking about here? Is it really doctrinal or personal? And let's drill down and find out what we need to do to resolve those situations. And so all these sort of things go on, and I know that these are all different situations. You deal with different situations. You've got maybe a small group or a certain region in the church. But really, once again, what we find is this gets down to us not dealing with just the facts, but finding out really what's going on in the heart of the brothers and sisters that are going through this conflict. So having said that, I'll invite Kim up one more time.
I think the situations that Walter shared about briefly, to witness, we'll use the first one as an example, where you have grandparents. The love of grandparents is very intense. You have grandparents that love their children and their grandchildren that had been best friends in the past. To see unity come, and at the end of the time where they share the pains with each other, that they embrace and in tears and forgive each other, and they now are reconciled and so close. I think it's absolutely amazing to witness. But I think also, just thinking about Jesus, it amazes me that before he goes to the cross, what he prays about is unity. I think about, if I was going to face the cross, I'd pray about the pain, or take this from me, or many other things, or even evangelism, or so many things. But his number one thing he prays about for all of us is unity, because he knew that was going to be such a problem for us. I think, too, I just want to really encourage the women that we can really have an impact in the church in bringing unity. And we can be, Satan will try to discourage us, or let us think that it's not our problem, or let's let the brothers handle this. But we can have a very profound impact. One of the things that I spend a lot of time on at home is we have a camp it's Camp Hope for Kids, and we have about 3,000 people that come through in the summer now. It goes on all summer long. And the team of us that work on that, I got to a point where you could tell it was getting disunified. And sometimes we don't have to let things get so huge that there's a huge issue. But with Walter's help and some coaching and the things that he's talked about, I said, okay, I need to, before we start this next meeting, I need to really address the disunity that's going on amongst us, because I know Satan's not going to bless us. And it wasn't a long drawn out, it was a couple hours that we spent together, but here's a few of the questions that I shared with them. I started out just saying, what is our vision for our group? What are we trying to do? And we all agreed that our vision is unity and success, to have a great impact and to be unified. We then went on and talked about, how do we see Satan working? And we could all, every one of us, see how Satan was trying to disunify us, our lack of trust, things that were going on. The next question that I asked is, where have I gone wrong? For all of us to share, how have we been a part, or how has Satan worked through us to bring disunity in the direction that we were going? The fourth question is, how have I been hurt? And we talked before we shared how we've been hurt, that if anyone shared how they'd been hurt, the response is not an explanation of why I did that to you, but empathy. And again, due to Walter's coaching, he said you've got to realize you've got to say time out if it starts getting off track. Because the key to sharing that, how I've been hurt, is that the person across the table, I have to hear empathy from them, not judging me for why they did what they did. And then lastly, we ended with, how can we move forward together? But since we took that morning and talked about those things, we've been unified and we're moving together in a great way. And I think many times if we can sort of stop things early before they turn into a big problem. There's things that we need to resolve and situations we need to deal with, but I think that we need to get better at redirecting in a godly way early on.
Okay, guys, so what we've done in the last couple of nights is given you a framework to work with, to understand that unity is so important. It's what Jesus prayed about, and it's really our relationship one with another. That what goes in our hearts is really the key, and that there can be a process to get that exposed, but it's not through one side attacking another, but rather each side being vulnerable and saying, I understand how you feel, I'm really sorry about that. That in doing that, barriers come down, forgiveness can be offered, reconciliation can be achieved, and then off we go from there. I think that, as I said earlier, after you do that, there is a time for practicals, okay? Let's look at 2 or 3 things that may have set this off initially, and let's make sure that doesn't happen again. But you can have those discussions 2, 3, 4 weeks after the reconciliation and the emotional connection is